Hello, and welcome to episode number 14, the Ty Detmer episode of The Checkdown, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. Make sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on Twitch. So let's get into it. We are in the middle of a series breaking down NFC East position groups. And so last time, we broke down and did power rankings for the quarterback position. And so if you missed those, make sure you check it out. Today, we're going to dive into the running back position. And so number one in the NFC East running back power rankings, we have the New York Giants. In 2020, Saquon Barkley was a non-factor after an early injury, but the Giants will bring him and Devontae Booker in as their 1 and 2 running backs. Devontae Booker last year had 93 carries for 423 yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and he had 3 touchdowns. He also had 17 receptions for 84 yards. Now, Saquon Barkley only played 2 games before he tore his ACL in 2020, and he averaged 1.8 yards per carry in those 2 games. And that's a really bad start, but it's such a small sample size, it's not something that I think people should be concerned about. The question with Barkley is, will he come off of that ACL injury okay? Now, there's tons of precedent for running backs coming back and being just fine. You had Adrian Peterson in 2012 tearing his ACL at the end of the season, and he almost broke the rushing record the following season. And so with this being simply an ACL injury and so early in the season, it was sustained in week 2 against the Bears, I'm unconcerned about Saquon Barkley's ability to come back. Now, if he's unable to come back at 100%, if he has lost a step, that doesn't bode well for the Giants, who don't really have much around him in terms of a rushing attack. But if healthy, Saquon is easily a top 3 running back in the league and by far the best running back in the division. Now, at number 2, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They have Miles Sanders, who logged 867 yards rushing and 197 receiving yards with 6 touchdowns and 4 fumbles in 2020. That was 5.3 yards per attempt. They also have Kerryon Johnson, Boston Scott, and Kenny Gainwell, the rookie. And Miles Sanders didn't have the best year last year, particularly as a receiver where he struggled mightily. But he showed a lot of explosiveness in the running game. And so the Eagles expect this to be the year that Miles Sanders puts it all together. However, the Eagles will go with a heavy running back by committee approach, as they do. And they're really the only team in the division that does that. They claimed Kerryon Johnson off of waivers after an abysmal 2020 season, and they hope to get him back to his 2018-2019 form. They returned Boston Scott, the giant killer, and they drafted Kenny Gainwell, who figures to feature prominently in the passing attack. And so if Johnson pans out, he's an ideal running back too with Miles Sanders, and you can let Scott and Gainwell vie for that 3rd running back and receiving role. Now, at number 3, we have the Dallas Cowboys. In 2020, Ezekiel Elliott had 244 carries for 979 yards. That's 4 yards per attempt and 6 touchdowns, while adding 338 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns through the air and fumbling 6 times. Tony Pollard was their backup. He had 101 carries for 435 yards, and he had 193 receiving yards and 5 total touchdowns. Now, the Cowboys are probably lower on this list than people might expect, but I don't think people fully realize how bad Ezekiel Elliott was last year. It was the worst year of his career in yards per game, yards per carries, fumbles, and touchdowns. And so as he enters the big part of his contract, his production is in free fall. His yards per game has fallen every season from 109 to 98 to 96 to 85 to 65 last season. His yards per carry have fallen from 4.7 to 4.5 to 4.0 in the last 3 years. And you might say that he faced a lot of loaded boxes, especially after Dak Prescott went down, but the reality is that Next Gen Stats charted him running into heavy boxes on only 12.7% of his runs. When you compare he and Tony Pollard, Pollard was by far the better option last year. He was facing a heavy box twice as often, and he still posted a better yards per attempt and a breakaway run rate of 5% compared to Zeke at 1.6. And so the Cowboys will look for Ezekiel Elliott to bounce back, but if not, Tony Pollard may begin to eat more and more into his carries. And now, number 4, we have the Washington football team. They have Antonio Gibson, who had 170 carries for 795 yards, which is 4.7 yards per attempt, with 11 touchdowns. He also added 247 yards through the air. They'll also have J.D. McKissick as the running back too. Now, Gibson was a third-round pick last year, and he had a better year than I think most people would have expected. He was kind of a head-scratching pick in the third round, but he really turned it on later into the season, and he has a chance to prove that he can maintain that level of production and take the pressure off of a veteran Ryan Fitzpatrick in the rushing attack. It is not crazy to think that if he is able to do that, that he could be number 2 on this list next year, as the Washington football team has a pretty good outlook in their backfield, if you ask me. Well, that's going to do it for episode number 14 of the Check Down. Make sure you subscribe here on YouTube so you don't miss the next episode, and drop a comment down below. Let me know who you think has the best running back room in the NFC East.